All right, guys, welcome back to the Pocket Mads channel. It's Maddie here, and welcome back to Meta Monday, the weekly series where we analyze the Pokemon Pocket metagame and keep you guys up to date on everything going on in the competitive world of Pokemon Pocket. This past weekend was PMPT number 41, an incredible tournament where almost 500 players came out to compete. What's insane is that this was actually not the only 500 player tournament of this past weekend. There was another event that I was lucky enough to be a part of that happened on Friday. It was the Pokemon Pocket Community Tournament that was kind of a group project between Taj and the Swiss Alpine League and a bunch of other people that were involved. So again, massive shout out to all of them. We don't have all of the time to cover the results of both tournaments in today's video. So unfortunately, we're only going to be talking about the PMPT number 41 tournament in today's video, but definitely go check out the results of that community tournament on Friday. It was kind of a single day tournament, so best of one was, or Swiss was best of one, and it was interesting. It was a really fun tournament. I was able to cast top cut rather with Spraggles, which was a lot of fun. So yeah, if you guys tuned into that, shout out to you. And again, I'm sorry we don't have time to cover the results of that tournament, but again, a very unique weekend just because we had two such large tournaments, and I think that the metagame and everything about PMPT number 41 this past weekend was sort of reactionary to the results of that Friday tournament. So there's been a lot that's happened for meta progression, and we're going to try to kind of talk about it all in today's video. We're going to break down the results of everything, and I'm really interested, and you guys should be too, because there's a lot of crazy things going on right now with Pokemon Pocket. It's a really, really fun time. That being said, you guys should go register for this weekend's upcoming PMTT number 42 tournament. This one's called Serenity of the Skies. So there you go. $100 in the prize pool. It is going to be Saturday, August 15th at noontime Eastern. Link to register down in the description below. Yeah, so let's just dive right into the results from PMPT number 41. I don't know if this is going to be either a shock to some people or the opposite of a shock, but here we go. Here are the final results. We're going to go to pocketmads.com, the greatest website in Pokemon Pocket history. Link down in the description below. Let's dive into it. So here you go. Here are the final standings from this past weekend's PMPT number 41 tournament. Again, almost 500 players. And you'll see that basically the entirety of top 8 at our tournament and in the standings is either Mega Lucario or the new Hoopa EX. So those two Pokemon kind of completely entirely took up top 8, which again, to some people might be kind of a surprise, but to me, it's really not. This was really where the metagame was going. Mega Lucario swept in kind of before this weekend. I would say kind of Wednesday and Thursday, it really started to bubble up as really a great counterplay to a lot of the meta's most popular decks. And I think that Hoopa, although even back then, early last week, it was probably still one of the strongest decks in the game, it did have some checks, right? Like some of these grass type decks, things like Vespiquen actually were quite strong into Hoopa. But as it turns out, Hoopa is one of the few decks that actually does have a pretty good win rate into Mega Lucario. And I think that's sort of where the standings, sort of come from here. It is very interesting. Whenever there's a top cut bracket and it's single elimination, it really is very matchup dependent. You never know, which decks are going to match up into other decks, and it really is sort of kind of a random thing. It requires a lot of luck to win tournaments as well as a lot of skill, and you got to be playing the right decks. Now, PP Toppin from Spain gets first place playing Mega Lucario. So Mega Lucario does get that first place spot, but if you look below Mega Lucario, the next 6 decks are all Mega Hoopa, or not Mega, I always say Mega Hoopa. They're all Hoopa EX decks, which there's 2 different variants mainly that people play for Hoopa. There's the Dark Hoopa that just play Darkrai and either Mega Absol or Mega Sableye, no Greninja, and then there's Hoopa and Greninja. And yeah, second place is going to be Chartreuse from Belgium playing Dark Hoopa. Pidon from Korea, South Korea that is going to be playing also Dark Hoopa in third place. And then in fourth place is Boat Toxology from the United States, who's playing Hoopa Greninja. And then Magma Ice in here from, I believe, Portugal, yes. And we do have the country flags now on pocketmads.com, which is really cool. And I really love the opportunity to make sure that we have those. I reached out to our site dev and I was like, we really need the country flags on our standings on pocketmads.com because it's a really big thing. And it's great that the players from all over the world are able to really, I guess, kind of represent their country, right? Pokemon Pocket in the community is really a global thing. So it was really important to us. So we made sure we got that onto the website. Botoxology, was playing Hoopa Greninja, but also Magma Ison from Portugal. In 5th place, playing Hoopa Greninja. And then if we go down to Maiji, I think is how you say it, from Japan, in 6th place was playing Dark Hoopa, this time with Sableye instead of Absol. And then Fraps Drinker, S0 from Greece, 7th place, was also playing Dark Hoopa. And then all the way in 8th place here, I say all the way, but in 8th place, Germany, Hansi was playing Mega Lucario, right? So if you take a look at top 8, in 8th place, but also in 1st place, Mega Lucario, but 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th place were all Hoopa decks, which I find to be, you know, kind of crazy that this is what happened. We had 6 Hoopas in top 8, and none of them got 1st place, right? It was actually just one of the 2 Mega Lucarios. But yeah, those were the only 2, you know, kind of core archetypes. I guess there's 3 because Hoopa Greninja is different that made top 8. And that's crazy. Realistically, like, this being the result is absolutely insane. But again, keep in mind, Mega Lucario extremely dominant. Magnezone and Miraidon was an archetype that actually did win the Friday's tournament. It beat Mega Lucario in finals. It did extremely well at that Friday tournament. And I think it did well at this tournament as well. But keep in mind, I still think Hoopa is just such an incredible card. I said it when I saw this card released. Like, if you go back to our set review, I kind of started to freak out about Hoopa because I was like, this card is crazy. I think some people agreed, some people didn't, but at this point, with the metagame sort of fully settled in at this point, yeah, Hoopa EX is just ridiculous. It's such a strong leadoff option, and it just gives you so much great pacing and pressure early in games. It really is kind of phenomenal. But there's a couple of really small things here that when we pull up the deck lists, I really do want to dive into. Now, if we get outside of top 8, you'll see that it was Jacob J in 9th place from the USA who was playing Magnezone and Helioisk, which is a very interesting deck, not sort of a meta, you know, kind of archetype that you see that often. 10th place is going to be Elite Four Sableye from France, and he was playing Blaziken Greninja. Okay, so Blaziken finding its way in here, really the only like rare candy deck anywhere here in top 16. So he gets 10th place from France. Ray 14 from Italy, 11th place, was playing Magnezone Miraidon, so it is here somewhere right here in 11th place. But 12th, 13th, and 16th place are all also Mega Lucario. So Mega Lucario still extremely dominant in terms of overall placements here this weekend. Just outside of top 8, 3 others, because Hansi is 8th place, right? So plenty of Mega Lucario making it here into top 16. It's going to be Sylar, 33 from Croatia, Pepin MX from Mexico, 13th place, and then again S0 Nuno GDM from Portugal, also playing Mega Lucario. And then in 14th place is Frog EX, Babar from France was playing Mega Rayquaza, the Gouging Fire version. So if anyone's curious kind of what's going on with Mega Rayquaza, certainly a very, very strong deck list, but, you know, it is a bit of a struggle when your entire deck is reliant on kind of this, you know, low HP, you know, energy accelerating engine in Dragonair, which is very targetable by some of these bench damage attackers, which do exist in Pokemon Pocket very prevalently amongst the top archetypes, right? Hoopa dealing a ton of bench damage, even in, you know, the fighting type Mega Lucario decks, maybe playing Hitmonlee. So, you know, those Dragonairs can be targeted. I think playing Mega Rayquaza right now is a little bit scary, especially considering that Mega Lucario as an archetype can, in fact, just one-hit KO, you know, Mega Rayquaza. So the metagame isn't super kind to Mega Rayquaza right now. Certain strategies just are a bit more well-positioned, at least in the current state of how the metagame's looking. Things are going to change and develop, trust me, but, you know, in terms of this snapshot in history of the Pokemon Pocket metagame, things like Hoopa, things like Lucario are just exceptionally well-positioned. 15th place is 1% skill, 99% luck from Japan, and you know, appropriately, he was playing Sleep Altaria, and he got 15th place, right? So shout out to him. This is hilarious. Shout out to this player. You gotta love it. Yeah, and I think Sleep Altaria is also a deck that we really need to take a look at, but once again, right, the pacing, the bench damage, the aggression of these Hoopa decks really kind of limiting, kind of gatekeeping a lot of certain, you know, types of decks from, you know, becoming too popular in the metagame. So yeah, anyway, a couple of things that stand out to me: no grass, right? There's no grass type decks here in top 16, which is pretty crazy since Vespiquen was by far the most successful deck kind of coming into this weekend throughout this entire season. But again, Mega Lucario does quite well into Vespiquen. It can just one-hit KO all of these Pokemon, so it just gets set up, and then it can KO the Shuckle, it can KO Ogerpon, it can KO Vespiquen. It really is like a tough matchup for Vespiquen, which, you know, it does well into Hoopa, quite frankly. We'll take a look at the metagame data. We'll see how many people were playing Vespiquen, and if it really was kind of a prominent factor, at least in Top Cut Bracket, because at this point, taking a look at the decks here at the top of the standings, what that does tell me is that most of the decks that were in Top Cut were either favorable for Hoopa or were Hoopa, right, to some degree. Because again, like being 6 out of the top 8 decks is kind of crazy. It's just not something that you really see that often. But once again, it is kind of the main meta driver here. If Hoopa were to get first place at this weekend's tournament, I think things would have been very different, just because people would have probably gravitated towards it a bit more. But since Lucario did get first place, like I think Hoopa is probably going to still be somewhat relevant for the next week or two. You know, probably extremely relevant, just because again it can really hold its own into Mega Lucario in ways that a lot of other decks can't. But anyway, guys, let's dive into the deck list. We're 10 minutes in. I know it always takes a long time. We're going to talk about all of the decks here, kind of all of the different decks maybe in top 16. There's going to be some duplicates, so I might skip over some people. I apologize. But then we'll get into the metagame data, and that's really we're going to get the full story of what went on this weekend. So anyway, PP Toppin from Spain. From Spain, right? I don't want to get that wrong. Yeah, from Spain. First place. Let's take a look at his Mega Lucario deck list. And again, we do have the code cards, which is phenomenal. So here we go. He went 12-2. Mega Lucario, such a strong deck list here. Now, a couple of things that really stand out to me about this Mega Lucario deck is that it is functionally a bit different than other kind of Mega Lucario decks that we've seen over the last couple of seasons, right? So 2-2 Riolu and Mega Lucario line. We do have one Fighting Coach Lucario in here, as well as one Arena of Antiquity and one Karina, one Lucky Ice Pop, one Poncho. And I think that Poncho is a really big deal given the state of the metagame and all of the bench damage that's floating around. He was playing one Hitmontop for his lead-off Pokemon options. One Hitmontop and one Bonsly. So this Bonsly card is actually a really big deal, I think, for this deck list. During your opponent's next turn, attacks used by the defending Pokemon do -30 damage, which means that Bonsly can sit in the active spot in the face of a Hoopa EX almost infinitely, right? So this really does kind of limit Hoopa's ability to put a ton of pressure on in the early game, especially if this Bonsly can attack and get this attack off before Hoopa can, which happens pretty often, considering that, you know, if you go first or go second, you know, you should just be, if Bonsly's in the active, it should be able to get that attack off no matter what before Hoopa does. Now, they still have Darkrai, they still have Greninja and stuff, but again, it does really limit Hoopa from being immediately, you know, able to apply that pressure, right, in the matchup. So I think Bonsly's actually really, really nice. The other thing it does is that it is an effect that works onto like the Pokemon you're attacking, right? So like Bonsly can still switch out and go into like a Mega Lucario, and in the mirror matchup or in other matchups, the Pokemon that you're swapping into, as long as your opponent is still into that Pokemon, you know, they have the same Pokemon in the active, that Pokemon is going to be doing 30 less damage to whatever you bring in, right? So it kind of transfers over. It's a negative effect on your opponent's Pokemon and not necessarily on Bonsly itself. So that's a really strong kind of effect here, and you can kind of carry it over into the next Pokemon. It's a lot of damage reduction, as well as really valuable chip damage, just a consistent lead-off Pokemon, one that I think is really, really good. And then Hitmontop, right? Just such a good card. This is basically fighting type Pheromosa. It does have a retreat cost of 2, which does kind of make Hitmontop feel a little bit limiting sometimes, but you're going to attach to it regardless. You're going to attack for a couple of turns, so we do have an X speed in the deck list if we wanted to retreat into something else. Field Blower in here, Cyrus in here, double Pokeball, double Copycat, double Research. A very straightforward deck list, and one that I think really is quite strong. I really like the combo here. Tons of extra damage modification on Mega Lucario, which again, as we know, can 1-hit KO so many of the most relevant Pokemon in the current metagame. This is why, to me, I think that these sort of stage 2 Mega Pokemon that are outside of that 1-hit KO range of Mega Lucario might kind of make a comeback. Things like Blaziken, things like Sceptile, right? You know, Vespiquen super strong, Hoopa super strong, Suicune super strong. So many strong cards that are at the forefront of the metagame. Unfortunately, they all can get 1-hit KO'd by Lucario. So it's really something that I think is also sort of gatekeeping the metagame in a way. There's nothing else in the game that is like Mega Lucario, which doesn't require that much setup and just can come in and start 1-hit KOing almost anything in the game. So yeah, I feel pretty confidently Mega Lucario is that guy. He's going to have a great season. It's already having a great season. Yeah, just uniquely well positioned into most things. Here's the code, by the way. So I know it's Meta Monday, but guess what? We also have the code. So if you guys want to copy the decks, you can do that here in today's video as well, which is really cool. So first place deck list, here's the code, Mega Lucario, a deck list that I really, really like. I don't know if anyone really suspected Bonsly to be getting first place at the largest Pokemon Pocket tournament of this entire season, which is actually what this tournament was, which is crazy. Basically, in the second week, of the season, we actually had more players than that first weekend, which is usually not the case, I don't think, which is kind of surprising. Maybe that does happen. I don't know. Anyway, shout out to PP Top in there. Let's get into the second place deck. This is going to be Chartreux from Belgium. And this is Dark Hoopa, okay? And now this is a deck list that to me is pretty gross. Like, this is one of the more disgusting decks in the entire game. 11-2-1 record, again, just losing in grand finals, but an incredible run here. A Hoopa EX, 2 copies of it, 1 Darkrai, 1 Absol. That's it. Right? So immediately we're playing a low Pokemon count deck list, meaning we can play tons of trainer cards that are extremely useful. And trust me, Pokemon Pocket has no shortage of very, very strong trainer cards that we are playing in this deck list. We are playing double Copycat, double Research, double Pokeball, but we're also playing double Cyrus, right? 2 copies of Cyrus seems a bit crazy, but again, tons of bench damage with Hoopa, Deceptive Needle, furthering the pressure in the aggression and the damage on our active Pokemon, and here on your opponent's active Pokemon, rather. And then starting planes plus Lucky Ice Pop is a big deal. All of our Pokemon are basics, and they're all pretty high HP basics. Hoopa's going to go to 170, Darkrai goes to 160, Mega Absol goes to 190, right? So that's a ton of HP on all of these basic Pokemon. The prize math works out. Like, having to go through Hoopa EX and then Mega Absol, like, is a big deal, especially with all of the damage that Darkrai is outputting. It reminds me of Giratina Darkrai in the sense that all of those energies that you get to attach throughout the first 3 or 4 turns of the game, like, it equates to more damage because Hoopa's pretty tanky. It's going to be there for a while, especially with the Lucky Ice Pops and starting planes and whatnot. You're going to get a lot of Nightmare Aura Ping damage output. And again, Hoopa just gets to attack turn after turn after turn while you build up your board state. It's a ton of pressure. It's really, really hard to stop this deck from kind of doing exactly what it wants to do. Field Blower to get rid of those protective ponchos or stadiums, whatever it might be, and a Repel. So Repel's a really, really good card. Again, only 4 Pokemon in this deck, so we have 16 trainer card slots, double Cyrus, but why not just play 1 Repel? Why not play 1 Small Balloon as well, just to kind of give that Absol free retreat if you do lead with it? Really, really good deck list, guys. I mean, this is a deck that I just think has so much going for it. I don't know why they decided to make the dark, archetype that much better, but they did. It's so good. Like Hoopa EX, Deceptive Needle, these are massive buffs to dark type decks, and I think any dark type deck is going to benefit a ton from playing these 2 cards, especially just like the other dark Pokemon that we have available to us. They just sort of fit into these decks so easily. Like it's absolutely insane to me. And again, we'll see that somebody was playing a Sableye as well instead of Mega Absol. In general, I do think I'd rather play Mega Absol just because it just sort of, like, the damage isn't necessarily needed, that extra damage for Sableye for this deck, so I'd rather play, the supporter discard and kind of have that as like a tech option, especially in like the mirror matchups, right, where double Cyrus is floating around. I think Mega Absol is in general just better, but Mega Sableye also strong, and again, 95% of the deck is going to be the same if you're swapping out Sableye for Absol, but we'll take a look at that in a little bit. Yeah, and again, guys, I mean, it didn't get first place, but it got second place. It also got third place, and I think it got other placements as well in top 8. So here's the code for the second place Dark Hoopa deck. I'm calling this Dark Hoopa. I know Hoopa is a dark type, but we have Greninja Hoopa, or Hoopa Ninja, so I'm just going to be calling this like Dark Hoopa, or yeah, like just Dark Hoopa. That's what I'm calling it. If you guys have a better name for this, let me know. Darkrai is very important. And again, with the single energy attack cost in Hoopa really makes me want to play 1 copy of Darkrai in this deck just to kind of put further pressure on the active, right? For 1 energy, Hoopa EX plus Darkrai plus Deceptive Needle, like you can just deal like literally 60 damage to the active and 20 to the bench while setting up your bench Pokemon all the while, right? Like it really just feels so good. It's so strong. I don't know what they were thinking, but there we go. Here's P Don's deck. This is the third place deck. Let's see if there's anything different here. And yes, okay, so you'll see immediately we have the Indeedee in here. And this is, I think, something that was cooked up by the Froggy X boys, maybe the Magma team. I don't know who was sort of the first person to coin Indeedee. I just don't remember. But Indeedee's a really good card for this deck list. Again, for the same reasons that, you would see it in like Giratina Darkrai, right? It's just another basic Pokemon that can hang out on your bench and kind of keep Hoopa alive a little bit longer. Going to be really nice in the mirror matchup. No protective poncho, so it is somewhat of an easy target. But, the extra healing on the active Pokemon does go a long way. And regardless of which Pokemon's in the active spot. And I believe we just cut 1 Lucky Ice Pop for that Indeedee. Now, Indeedee itself is not useful as an attacking Pokemon, so it's never good in the active spot, but it does have a retreat cost of 1, so it doesn't really matter. We do still have Small Balloon in the deck list. So I like Indeedee. It's got its upsides, it's got its downsides. Again, the third place deck at the largest tournament this season was Dark Hoopa playing one copy of Indeedee, so there's certainly some merit to it. Try it out. Try out both of these decks. This is Pedon's deck, the third place deck playing Indeedee. Otherwise, basically the same deck list. And again, does give it a lot of extra benefit, right? In that mirror matchup, being able to heal a lot of that damage off of Hoopa, but also just in general, like in other matchups, it's a big deal. The healing Indeed is an incredible card. It's seen play in so many top tier meta decks, and I think it fits into this strategy a bit better than you might suspect at first glance, especially given like what's going on with the metagame, right? That Hitmontop hitting for 20 in the Lucario deck, maybe Bonsly hitting for 10, like just healing that active Pokemon damage is a really big deal, and I think it does actually go a really long way for a deck list like this. So here's the Indeedee version if you want to try it. To be fair, they're almost the exact same deck, so you should just be able to change the deck list around in game. But yeah, in fourth place, it's going to be Boat Toxology, yet another Hoopa deck. However, this is going to be the other side of the Hoopa coin, which of course is not playing Darkrai. We're not playing Indeedee. We've cut a couple of trainer cards, and we're just playing the 2/2 Greninja line with Rare Candy, right? So this is a deck that to me has a lot more late game strength potential, right? Like, yes, like I understand, you don't necessarily always draw into Greninja. You can never really get them on your board that early or that consistently. Sometimes you do, but this is a deck that, of course, whenever you're playing 2 copies of Greninja, has the potential to be that much stronger if, of course, you can get, Hoopa and Greninja and everything on the board, right? In the end game, having Mega Absol out there with double Greninjas backing it up is a really big deal. Tons of extra bench damage, less active Pokemon damage without Darkrai, less consistent overall, but more of a high roll version of Hoopa, incredibly strong. I mean, there's a reason why this is also a deck that got 2 different top 8 placements this weekend. I understand why people would probably choose to play the Darkrai version over this. Consistency is typically really, really good in aggressive strategies like this, but if you wanted to play a high roll Hoopa EX deck, this is the other side of the coin, right? And anything with Greninja is just inherently kind of a high roll deck, because you have like 6 cards in your deck that are kind of useless unless you draw them all together, all right? And then they're pretty strong. And that's why it's just less consistent, but more, high-end potential, more high roll, as we like to call it. Only 1 copy of Cyrus in here, 1 Field Blower, 1 X Speed, still 2 Needle. Again, a lot more space, or a lot less space rather, available in a deck like this whenever you're playing 2 Froakie, 2 Greninja, 2 Rare Candy. It reminds me of, just like the Altaria decks back in the day, right? And a couple of seasons ago, like before Sleep at least, like you'd see, all these different Altaria decks, but there was really, Greninja Altaria or just Psychic Altaria. And we're kind of seeing the same thing here with Hoopa, whether you want to play just a high roll version or a more consistent version. So here is Boat Toxology's deck, 10-3 record. Again, a top 4 finish. Greninja Hoopa still one of the best decks, honestly, in the entire game. It really just comes down to preference, right? I mean, what kind of style of deck would you rather like to play? We all know Greninja's super strong, right? It's just at this point, the pacing of Pokemon Pocket has kind of ramped up so quickly that realistically, like it's not always, it used to be. Back in the day, if you could just throw Greninja into your deck list, and not that long ago, you were probably better off for it, just because like everything was sort of more high roll. But now in like the power creep and sort of the aggression of Pokemon Pocket these days, it's almost better to be more consistent, which is a very interesting progression of Pokemon Pocket in the meta decks. But anyway, there you go. Hoopa EX and Greninja. And honestly, Magnezone was also playing Hoopa Greninja. I'll pull this up just so you can see if it's any different. It is, in fact, they're playing 1 inflatable boat instead, and 1 needle and double Cyrus. Okay, so a little bit different. So the other deck was playing 1 XP, double needle, 1 Cyrus. This deck here is playing double Cyrus, 1 boat, 1 needle. So the boat's, of course, only going to be useful into Froakie. I don't know why you wouldn't just play Small Balloon here, but I guess you could evolve Greninja and it would still have free retreat. So that's the upside there. But yeah, no, I mean, it's virtually very similar. Again, a little bit more leaning into the kind of the Greninja Cyrus combo here. More tailored to the Greninjas in the deck list than the other version was, but only 1 needle in here. And I do think needle is extremely good. I think it's very, very, very good. Yeah, there you go. Very interesting. Very cool. This is going to be Magnezone deck, and here's the code if you guys wanted to download it. Are you tired of Hoopa yet? Are you done seeing the Hoopa stuff? You know what I mean? Trust me, you're going to be seeing a lot more of it in the future. Just an incredible card. Bench damage, always so good in Pokemon Pocket, as I think everyone knows. Quickly, let's just kind of bring up Maiji's deck, because this is going to be the version with Sableye. I know it's just like this whole video has been Hoopa's decks, but here's a version that's very similar. I like the one copy of Mars in here, so that's a little bit different. Still, two Needle, two Cyrus. I'm trying to think what other, I guess, so the Repel was swapped, so we're playing double Cyrus and Sabrina. No Repel in here. Still one Plains, one Small Balloon. We cut, I believe, one Copycat for a Mars, and that is interesting. I actually do like Mars in this deck list because we are playing two-price Pokemon. So once Hoopa goes down, you Mars them to 1, then you go into Mega Sableye, and I actually do like that. So it makes sense to me that the deck playing Sableye without the supporter discard still has some sort of control-y hand disruption aspect here with the Mars instead, right? So instead of playing just Absol, we're playing Mega Sableye, a bit more damage, but we also are playing Mars to kind of make up for, the inability that Sableye has to kind of rip the supporter cards from your opponent's hand, which is very cool. This is a very, very interesting deck. I'm glad we pulled this up. Shout out to MyG's deck, 9-2-1. There you go. Here is the code for Hoopa Sableye. Again, very similar though. You're playing Hoopa, you're playing Darkrai, you're playing Needle, you're playing Cyrus. Like the most of the deck is very much kind of the same. So try them all out. And let me know which one you prefer, but I think any of them really are going to be pretty phenomenal. I'm going to skip over Frabstrigger's deck, and I'm honestly going to skip over Hansy's deck just because, actually, you know what? I'm curious. I'm going to pull up Hansy because I want to see if it's any different or if it is also Bonsly. It's not. Okay, so this is the more standard version of Lucario that we would see like in the previous seasons, right? With Sock and Hitmonlee instead of just Hitmon top, right? They kind of flip back and forth. Like sometimes you see Hitmonlee and Sock or Zygarde sometimes as well. But also sometimes you just see Hitmon top, right? So here's kind of the other side of the coin there, just the other flavor of Lucario. A lot of people play one of each different type of Riolu. Some people might comment about that. They're different. This one just does 20 and this one does 10, but it can do 30 more if there's an EX in the active, right? So theoretically, this Riolu going to be a bit more useful potentially in the current metagame with those Hoopa EXs going to be leading off in the active. So into Hoopa, I'd rather play this Riolu because it's 40 damage instead of 20. But in general, like I don't know. They're both good. Most of the time, you're just not going to have Riolu in the active anyway. But one Sabrina, one Cyrus, one Karina, one Arena of Antiquity, and we're still playing Fighting Coach. So a lot of these Lucario decks are playing one copy of Fighting Coach, which is interesting. Poncho, X-Speed. There you go. There's the other Lucario deck. This is from Hansy. He went 9-3. I know most people are going to be just kind of going with the first place Lucario deck, and I believe the Lucario deck that made grand finals at Friday's tournament was also playing Bonsly Hitmontop. So that to me might just sort of become the standard, but both are good, to be honest with you. It really mostly comes down to preference. Bonsly, though, is a really, really cool tech, especially given the current state of the metagame and things like Hoopa running around. So very, very cool. There's the code. We love it. Okay, anyway, we're deep into this video. It's all been Hoopa and Lucario. So let's quickly pull up some other decks that some people might be interested in. Here's 9th place. This is going to be Jacob J, and this is going to be Helioisk and Magnezone. So kind of a purely single prize archetype here, fully leaned into the Clement's backpack package, right? Because as you know, Clement does search for Magneton as well, right? So we've seen Clement in the Magnezone decks, and of course we see it with the new Helioisk stuff. So we're playing 2 Helioptile and then one of each Helioisk in the deck, which is very interesting. The Electrospark, but also the Thunderbolt, which just does a ton of damage to the active. So Clement's backpack, definitely going to set that up, but we're also playing 1 Spark Magneton, which if you don't know, does 20 and does 20 to each of your opponent's benched Pokemon, right? So another kind of spread Pokemon here. A very interesting deck list. And again, 1 Oricorio, so a purely single prize Lightning archetype. I think the developers kind of intended us to play Lightning similar to this, but as we all know, things like Miraidon are just inherently broken, right? So, and things like Oricorio are going to find their way into decks. So it's interesting. This is actually the highest placing Magnezone deck of our tournament this past weekend. Very, very cool. Even though Magnezone Miraidon won the tournament on Friday, this was, I guess, our most successful version of Magnezone, which is definitely a unique deck list. Tons of spread damage, very aggressive against single prize archetypes. Still got Mirror Shot Magnezone, only playing 1 Magnezone in this deck though, which is kind of crazy, but I guess it makes sense because you wouldn't really evolve this Magneton. It's there to attack. Very, very cool. Lots of different attacking options in here, which I do like. And then, of course, Oricorio. Here's the code if you guys want to try this out. Very interesting deck. This is definitely one of the ones you would least expect from our placements this weekend. So it's nice to always have kind of a standout, kind of off-meta, deck list. It's very, very cool. There's the code, guys. This is from Jacob J. He went 10-1, by the way. So an incredible record. That's a deck we really got to keep our eyes on. Let's skip on down just a little bit. Oh, I went back too many. I got to go back to our tournament. Let's skip on down to Elite Four. Sableye, 10th place. Greninja and Blaziken. Is anything really surprising about this? No, I don't think so. I think this is pretty standard. I think this is kind of what people are accustomed to with Blaziken and Greninja. 1-1 Froakie, Greninja, 1 Juliana, double Candy. 2-1 lineup of Torchic. Actually not playing Combuskin or Frogadier. So that is interesting to me. Only 1 Mega Blaziken and 1 Greninja, 2 Rare Candy. So we are just entirely reliant on getting those Stage 2 Pokemon and Rare Candy, which again, we do have Juliana, we have Hiking Trail, Research, Copycat. This is definitely a high roll deck, but these Stage 2 Mega Pokemon are going to have a lot of merit kind of throughout this season, I think, just because Mega Lucario is such a prominent factor, and Mega Lucario cannot one-hit KO these 200-plus HP Stage 2 Mega Pokemon. So it's a really cool deck list. I do like this. 9-1-1, great record from Sableye here. Very, very cool. Our top-placing Fire-type deck. Fire does need a bit more support. I think that people, and by support, I mean, like, not necessarily like more, assistance from like accessory cards, because we do have the Rainbow Cave, which is technically a buff to fire types, which we don't really see at all this season. Interestingly enough, we have talked about that. The Rainbow Cave fire type stuff just isn't that common with Flame Patch, but fire Pokemon in general have kind of been left to the wayside. It's been a while since we had, really a strong inclusion for the fire type. They did give us Typhlosion in the set, but as we know, that's not necessarily that strong. And I think in terms of fire type Pokemon, everyone's just playing Blaziken still. It's just sort of still kind of the default card. Definitely some Charizard in there, a little bit of Charizards, but Blaziken is still that guy for the fire typing. So maybe we need something new, something else. Ray 14 in 11th place, and this is Magnezone Miraidon. So again, still definitely one of the stronger decks in the entire game. I'm surprised we didn't see more of these high up in the standings, but as we know, Hoopa is definitely something that can deal with an archetype like this pretty well. But Miraidon and Magnezone Miraidon this season has really transformed back into an Oricorio deck list. It's sort of, we're playing the 1 Miraidon, 1 Turo, and then double Magnezone, double Oricorio. And I do think that Oricorio is a pretty prominent deck right now. It's definitely a card that I think deserves to see a lot of play, and it's something that I think is just in general pretty relevant. The ability to just put a Pokemon in the active and then force your opponent to slow down for a minute is in fact a pretty big deal, and Oricorio is extremely useful. We saw it against Mega Lucario in the Grand Finals on Friday. We've seen it throughout this entire season. I really think Oricorio is actually still a very prominent factor here. It's only finding its way into Lightning decks, which is good. In the past, we've seen Oricorio just kind of slap with whatever early in seasons, but right now, it just sort of feels to be like a definitive card for the Lightning archetype, and, really any, high-placing Lightning type deck in the metagame, at least at this point, seems like it's probably just going to be playing Oricorio. But a really cool deck, Magnezone Miraidon. This is, again, a snapshot, but this is the version that I've been seeing a lot of this season. So again, a bit different from the more aggressive Miraidon deck of last season, which was playing double Miraidon, playing Zero Aura, playing Turo, really all about just sort of getting into Miraidon early and dealing a ton of damage. This is a bit more of a slower deck, right, with double Oricorio and double Magnezone, one that I think has been very successful this season, something that we're going to have to keep our eye on. Can beat Lucario. This seems like a deck that would lose to Lucario, but it actually doesn't really, because Oricorio just can't even get damaged by Lucario, and then Miraidon can actually just one-hit KO. So it's kind of a slower deck. It slows Lucario down a little bit and kind of meets it into the late game and says, you know what? I can one-hit KO your Pokemon too, except your Pokemon are worth 3 prizes. 3 points. So there you go, GG. And we kind of saw that on Friday. So very good deck. One that I probably thought would be a bit more prominent in the standings this weekend, but it's really good. Really, really good. I'm going to skip on down here to 14th place. This is Babar's deck, or Babar, 14th place. And this is going to be Mega Rayquaza and Gouging Fire. And I think that Mega Rayquaza, again, like I said, still a very, very strong deck. Gouging Fire is a great leadoff. It's not the most consistent deck in the world. It does feel a little bit high rolly to me. To be honest with you, if Gouging Fire just drops in play, then we could probably push a different version of Mega Rayquaza deck into the metagame. There's definitely a lot of potential there. Maybe a slower paced version with Oricorio. Maybe we play Dragon Arcana. Maybe we play Drampa in a more fast-paced, aggressive version of Rayquaza. All of these things are really good. These Dragon type decks are very, very good. And again, one of the key factors in progressing the metagame, right? When you take a look at what things are like right now, it's Lucario and it's Hoopa. These are 2 decks that are pretty well built specifically to deal with this Mega Rayquaza and Dragonair combo, right? Like, so like if you look at the decks that are, you know, at the forefront of the metagame right now, they're kind of there because of their matchups into certain things like Vespiquen and Dragonair Rayquaza, right? So again, it's played its part in the metagame. It's still an important deck, one that is still, a strong deck. People are looking at it, they're understanding it. They're choosing decks because of it, so it is definitely prominent still. Mega Rayquaza is a legitimate deck in the metagame, but again, you know, the way to counter it seemingly is you play heavy bench damage things, so you can target the Dragonairs, or like with double Cyrus, like on the Hoopa decks, or you just play Mega Lucario and you just want to KO Mega Rayquaza, right? You know what I mean? Now, the Gouging Fire can deal with Oricorio really easily, which is a big upside here. Again, a really strong deck. It really is, but maybe we have to change around Mega Rayquaza a little bit. I do think you could take the core package of Dragonair Rayquaza and you could change it around a little bit to have a much better matchup into things like Mega Lucario and Hoopa for that matter, right? Maybe more Poncho, maybe like Giant Capes, things like that. A lot of things you could do here with Mega Ray. So I'm interested to see how it progresses. It definitely has the opportunity to come back into the metagame. That is going to be my challenge to a lot of the top meta players this week, is how can you reincorporate or reinsert Mega Rayquaza back into the metagame to be kind of a significant meta player, considering the decks that are at the forefront right now being Hoopa and Lucario. It's going to be an interesting challenge. Lastly, in 15th place, 1% skill and 99% luck, playing Sleep Altaria. And this is a deck that we're all very familiar with at this point. I forgot to bring up the code, I believe, for Mega Ray. So here you go. There's the code if you guys wanted to play Mega Ray. This is very similar, I believe, almost identical to decks that we've covered for Mega Ray so far this season, so I don't think this is anything that different, but if you haven't copied the code yet, there you go. Anyway, let's get into Sleep Altaria. Again, I don't really have much to say about this. It's exactly what it was before. I actually think this has a ton of potential, right? This is a deck list that will do quite well into, of course, Mega Lucario, and it always has been. It's just Sleep Altaria with Espeon. It does good into Lucario. It's just the nature of the matchup. So, you know, if Mega Lucario really does end up taking over, expect some more Psychic, and you know, if you do expect some more, if we do get more Psychic, it's going to be more Altaria, and it's going to be more Sleep, which is still kind of the default way, unfortunately, for Mega Altaria to see play. Yeah. I wonder exactly. I don't really suspect this to be a deck that is that good into Hoopa. I just imagine Hoopa like targeting a Darkrai or whatever and just bringing it into the active, and then you just kind of can't do anything for too long, and then you just end up losing. Like, that's what I imagine that matchup being. So I don't think this is a deck that loves the Hoopa matchup. I could be wrong about that, but it definitely does like the Lucario matchup. So I find that to be quite interesting. Here's the code. I probably shouldn't even be showing this to you guys, but there you go. Sleep Altaria, 1% luck, 99% skill. I love it. I love when the players have, you know, a sense of humor when they know what's going on. You'll love to see it. Anyway, guys, that's all of the different decks in top 16, but stick around because we're going to crunch some data. We're going to take a look at the metagame data here, which is all broken out beautifully here on PocketMeds.com, which we love to see. So here we go. Let's dive into the metagame data just for a couple of minutes, and then we'll wrap up this video because it's getting a bit long. 484 players, the largest tournament of the season so far, which is crazy, in 113 different decks. Now, the most played archetype at 16% of the meta share was Mega Lucario. So even though it wasn't the most popular deck in top 8, it was by far the most popular deck of the tournament, by far the most popular deck of the tournament. As we saw, it did get first place, right? So, you know, meta share does translate to, first place finishes. Who would have thought, right? But second place most played deck was actually Magnezone Miraidon at 8%. Dark Hoopa was 7.4% of the meta, and then Vespiquen, 6.8% of the meta. But unfortunately, nowhere to be found in top 16. Altaria at 5.5%, Gouging Fire, Rayquaza 3.7%, so fallen pretty dramatically, and then the Greninja deck, Sceptile Greninja, which wasn't in top 16, but Greninja Hoopa, only 2.7% of the tournament, but we had multiple of them in top 8, so a deck that kind of really stood out in terms of its performance. Hoopa spread out in a lot of different archetypes, unlike things like Lucario, so that's why it won't probably be as high in the meta share, Hoopa's played a lot of different ways, and it's categorized differently on the Limitless platform. And look at this, guys. Win rate for the tournament. This might surprise you guys. So again, we did see Lucario get first place. We saw the standings and everything, but these were the most successful decks from win rates perspectives, right? These are the most played decks and how their win rates were. So actually, out of all of these decks that were the most popular, it was Mega Rayquaza that actually had the best win rate at 60%. So it had an incredible performance this weekend. If we take a look, it was only 3.7% of the tournament, but those players, that 3.7% had a 60% win rate playing Gouging Fire. And then second, it was Dark Hoopa with a 55%, and then Sleep Altaria also with 55%. Hooper Greninja was 54%, and things like Mega Lucario, Magnezone, Miraidon were actually floating just around 50%, which kind of makes sense because they were the most played archetypes. But Grass really struggling, really struggling, which is crazy. Sceptile Greninja only 43% win rate, and then Vespiquen all the way down to 40%. So the metagame has really shifted to be sort of counter meta, I would say, to Vespiquen. It was the most successful deck of that first week. The second week, you know, definitely all about kind of countering Vespiquen. And this is going to be your day 2 conversion rate. So this is crazy data. 37% of players playing Sleep Altaria made day 2. 33.3% playing Gouging Fire made day 2, and 30% of Greninja Hoopa players playing this archetype made day 2. 25% of Dark Greninja, Magnezone, Miraidon, and then Lucario. So even though Lucario was the most played deck of the tournament, a much smaller percentage of those players made day 2, which honestly you might expect. So its conversion rate definitely down a little bit to 18.2% of those players. Vespiquen just below it here, 12%, and then Sceptile Greninja, only 6.3% of players playing it made top cut. So conversion rate's a really interesting bit of data. Basically, if you segment this tournament into 2 different categories, day 1 is really a reflection of the greater metagame, right? So it's an even distribution of which decks are popular, and they all have as equal or more likely chance of hitting each other, right? So day 2 conversion rate, or top cut conversion rate, is a really good bit of data to reflect just how well certain decks are positioned in the actual metagame of decks that people are choosing to play, right? So what this tells us is that, again, aside from the standings, which is a result of how those decks matched up in top cut, given, again, all of these decks in this distribution of play rate here in deck representation, you know, which decks actually did the best? And Sleep Altaria did the best. It actually was the best deck in day 1, and Gouging Fire was actually the second best deck in day 1, and then followed by Hoopa, right? So things like Lucario, Magnezone, even though they did do well and Lucario won the tournament, it actually is much less well positioned into the greater scope of the metagame throughout the first day of competition. That's what this means. And it's really useful data, in fact. Very useful data. Top 8 versus field inclusions. And these are going to be pretty specific cards, as you see from Hoopa. These are all cards that you see in Hoopa, which is why these are kind of standout tech card inclusions. Deceptive Needle, Field Blower, Starting Plains, Ice Pop, Repel, Small Balloon. The culprit here is Hoopa. This is what this tells us. This bit of data is funny. It's actually quite interesting if there's a variety of different decks in top 8, because you can see sort of which cards are kind of blended between all of those different archetypes. In this sense, 6 out of top 8 decks were Hoopa, so these are all of the tech cards in Hoopa is what this is reflecting, which is always funny. But anyway, here's the matchup chart. And again, you guys should go to PocketMats.com and break this all down. We've been working so hard. D-Shook he's our developer. He's been working so hard, doing such a good job, kind of creating this website to be exactly what we always wanted it to be. And it's extremely useful, and it's so awesome. It's such a great website. Go to PocketMats.com. Go check it out. Here's the matchup spreads for the entire tournament. So Lucario doing really well into Magnezone. It's actually doing well into Dark Hoopa this weekend, and then good into Vespiquen, but struggling tremendously into Gouging Fire. So that's very interesting. I kind of figured it would be the other way around, but Gouging Fire, quite good into Lucario this weekend, is surprising to me. So is Sleep Altaria and Greninja Hoopa. So Greninja Hoopa much better into Lucario than Dark Hoopa is. Magnezone doing really well into Dark Hoopa and Vespiquen, but struggling into basically everything else into the field. Dark Hoopa struggling into most things other than Sleep Altaria, Gouging Fire, and Dark Hoopa. Okay, so this is what's really interesting about the metagame data right now. Greninja Hoopa better into Lucario. However, Dark Hoopa better into Hoopa Greninja, right? So it's kind of a weird catch-22 there. What do we got? Vespiquen is just struggling tremendously into most things other than Hoopa. It does somewhat well into Hoopa, 56% into Dark Hoopa, 75% this weekend into Greninja Hoopa. Sleep Altaria, really good into Lucario, really good into Magnezone, really good into Vespiquen, but struggling into Hoopa and Mega Rayquaza. And look at this Gouging Fire win rate is absolutely insane. So 86% into Mega Lucario, 64% into Magnezone, only 22% into Dark Hoopa, 0% into Hoopa Greninja, and 25% into, Sceptile Greninja, which again makes sense, right? Those Dragonairs can get targeted by the bench damage. So anything dealing bench damage is going to be a big struggle for Mega Ray, but really, really good into all of the other top archetypes. So definitely has a place in the metagame, I would say. And Greninja Hoopa, really, really good, other than into Vespiquen and Dark Hoopa, but really solid across the board. So, I mean, these were the most played decks, and honestly, very accurate distribution in terms of win rate. So a balanced metagame is what this tells me. Certain things do seem pretty well positioned. I mean, Sceptile Greninja does pretty well into most of the top meta decks, other than maybe Lucario, which is really, really cool. So that's a deck we got to look for, and Gouging Fire might be making a comeback. Really, really interesting stuff here, guys. There you go. There's Meta Monday from PocketMeds.com, PMPT number 41, Savior of the Skies. Thank you guys so much for coming out and playing. Again, almost 500 players. Absolutely incredible. I believe by the time PMPT 42 rolls around, the ranked season will have been released. So I understand if less people come out and play, but link to register will be down in the description below. Definitely go play if you have the time. And if not, tune into the live stream this weekend. It's going to be a great time. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for all of the future meta progressions. The season's crazy. We're already like 2 weeks into the season. So I think this season ends actually a bit earlier than others as well. So it's going to be kind of a fast turnaround here before the next set. But I'm here for it. It's really exciting. It's a lot of fun. But I'm going to get out of here, guys. Peace out. Have a good one. We'll see you guys next time. And yeah. Bye.